This is Booked on Rock. I'm Eric Senich. Our guests, Ken Caillat and Hernan Rojas, authors of Get Tusked, the inside story of Fleetwood Mac's most anticipated album. In this behind-the-scenes look at the making of Fleetwood Mac's epic platinum-selling double album, Tusk, producers and engineers Ken Caillat and Hernan Rojas tell their stories of spending a year with the band in their new $1 million studio, trying to follow up Rumours, the biggest rock album of the time. Following their massive success, the band continued its infamous soap opera when its musical leader and guitarist, Lindsey Buckingham, threatened to quit if he didn't get things his way, resulting in clashes not only with his band, but especially Caillat, who had been essential to the band's Grammy-winning sound. Rojas' story recounts a young man who leaves Chile after General Pinochet's coup to seek his future in the music industry of Los Angeles, where he finds success at one of the hottest studios in town. When Fleetwood Mac arrives, Rojas falls in love with its star singer, Stevie Nicks, and the two of them become romantically involved. Throughout the book, both Caillat and Rojas detail not only the trials and sacrifices they made to finish the album, but also triumphs of musical inspiration and technical innovation that have made Tusk the darling of music critics and indie rockers today. Here to talk about the book and the album Tusk are Ken Caillat and Hernan Rojas. Ken Caillat is the Los Angeles-based producer and engineer for the Fleetwood Mac albums Rumours, Tusk, Mirage, Live, and the Chain box set. He's also had the pleasure of producing his daughter Colby Caillat's albums, Coco, Breakthrough, All of You, and Christmas in the Sand. Hernan Rojas is a recording engineer, music producer, and morning anchor for Sonar 105.3 FM in Santiago, Chile, when not leading Great Place to Rock, a company dedicated to promoting change and transformation through music. To hear the songs discussed in this episode, check out the show notes page. Ken, Hernan, thanks so much for being on the podcast. It's great to talk to you guys.
Our pleasure.
Completely, absolutely.
Well, let's start with the beginning, the preface. Ken, you write about how, with Rumours being so massive, Fleetwood Mac had now been on the receiving end of an onslaught of newfound fame and fortune, and Tusk was the most outrageous way of responding to it. An ambitious double album, not to be a repeat of the last. Lindsey Buckingham, he wanted a darker album, didn't want to do the same as last. He also wanted you to distort the guitar, specifically on his tracks. If you could talk about your thoughts when you first heard that from Lindsey.
Well, I realized in writing this book, I gained a certain perspective after all these years. But at the time, really, we didn't know what to make of it. We thought Lindsey was just being stoned. He's being under the influence of his girlfriend, and he's being his typical difficult self. And he kind of looked around and he said, "If you don't do what I say, I'm going to quit the band." And he kind of looked to see if anybody bought into that. And I didn't. But everybody else went, "Oh, Lindsey, you can't quit." So he knew he could. He knew he needed to see how far he could push it, and he pushed it quite a bit. But anyway, it was a shocker for me. I like getting great guitar sounds, and part of what he was telling me is to take all the life out of the guitars, or certainly the energy. Hernan, you want to take over from there?
I think you said it all, Ken, but there's some of the phrases that we always use. There was always a lot of humor in all this. Obviously, it was that British, acid, very bitter humor. But one of the phrases was let's take it beyond the limits of taste.
Right, it's true.
Right, so that sort of tells what Ken faced, and I guess it's on the first or second chapter of the book when you talk about this beautiful sounding guitar on our first tests, and then the end result after going the opposite way, it was like an old tire, shot, in the middle of the street.
Did you guys want an album that would sound like Rumours, or not exactly like it, but you were hoping for a continuation of that sound, which was a huge hit?
Well, that certainly was my thing, because I had the financial incentive of being a producer now. So, in my mind, I wanted to make the Rumours too, and I got nominated for Best Engineered Album on Rumours. and I didn't get it. I lost to Steely Dan, which was a worthy adversary, certainly. But yes, I thought we built a studio at the Village strictly to make Rumours 2, in my mind. I mean, I didn't want to copy it, but I just wanted to do the same thing we did before, but only better.
And obviously the momentum was there, so the label was hoping for the same.
Right. And in retrospect, or hindsight, I wish that Lindsey just said, guys, I just don't want to do what I did before. I don't know how I'm going to try to trust my creative instinct to take me, whatever I throw at you guys, I'll make it into great stuff. So trust me and work with me on it. But he didn't say it like that. So it was an ultimatum for us.
Well, yeah, and Hernan, you wrote about Lindsey on a quest to continue down the road of his two musical heroes, Brian Wilson and John Lennon. Layers of non-traditional instruments, a lot of sounds on this album.
Exactly, yeah. And also, he was obsessed with all the punk bands coming out of England and also some of the American bands on how, their whole predicament was back to the roots, right? Clean up all the excess, shine, all the excess beauty or, layers of all the big rock bands and go back to, Buddy Holly, to Chuck Berry, to this basic thing, one microphone in the room, and let's play it in one take and let's go for it. So he also had that in mind, and he was listening to a lot of those albums. He was listening to The Clash. He was listening to, especially to the Sex Pistols. He was listening to some of the American bands that were doing punk, the Ramones, etc. So, yeah, and he did it. He did it in front of us. He cut his hair, he cut his t-shirts, he cut his pants.
I was gonna say, yeah, punk look too.
Absolutely. Yeah, he started wearing eye makeup.
Yeah, that had to have been quite a moment when he walks in.
Well, yeah, he had cut everything. He had, he used to have that real long curly hair, and it was gone, all of it gone. He's always a very uptight guy. I used to always say he could suck the fun out of a room in 10 seconds. He was just uptight and just tense all the time. But the interesting thing about it, he, like Hernan said, he wanted to do something that was more along the lines of the grunge and the bands that he really liked. But he only did that on his own music, on Tusk. On the rest of the girls' music, he just did this beautiful layering of beautiful sound. So, it was kind of that was made it also hard for us because the girls' records songs were all beautiful, and his were just distorted and edgy. And the more he could get distorted, the more he would like. And when you're sequencing a record and you've got to put songs back to back, it's hard to go from Beautiful Child to Not That Funny.
Do you think that would have been a deal breaker if he said on their songs he was going to do the same? Do you think they would have even have gone for that?
No, they wouldn't have. I know Stevie wouldn't have done it. Right. Her songs are sacred to her, and so Lindsey he knew not even to try that. And he knew he could do it with his own stuff. So that's the thing he was combative on the whole thing. I just think if he just had said to everybody, look, I'm not going to fuck with your stuff. I'm going to do it just on my stuff. Just work with me. It could have been much more pleasant. Yeah, but every day we were under martial law, it seemed like, we didn't know what he's going to do. He eventually took all his tapes home and worked on them at home so nobody would have any input on it. There's one picture of John and Mick sitting there and John's bass is in the trash can, and John and Mick both have duct tape over their mouth. So it was the way he did it. It was just made it really, to me, a very difficult situation for 12 months.
Was this an issue that came up again in the future, including Lindsey's most recent exit? Is this something that was a theme throughout his time in the band?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so. He did a lot of that. If you don't do what I say, I'm going to quit. Then they finally just said, so quit.
He was bumping heads with John from the get-go, right? When he first joined for the first self-titled album, I think he was trying to tell John what to do. John McVie, right? And McVie said, hey, back off.
I don't know about that. I wasn't there, but I know that he did have that one episode of redoing John's bass part on the strummer without John's permission. And it was kind of funny the way it went down with Chris Morris, our second engineer, said, "Hey, Ken, why don't you play John, Lindsey's new bass part?" Lindsey and John McVie, who was already 2 sheets to the wind, said, "What the fuck?" And so we played this John's bass line on Strummer or Secondhand News was bum 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 originally, and then when Lindsey had it, it was just doom, 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 one note pretty much down the line. So to me, when I heard that, I thought, boy, I mean, John McVie's bass line was so beautiful. What a brilliant part he played. But I certainly acknowledge the fact that it took a lot of real estate in the record, where Lindsey was going to fill that with harmonics and beautiful frosting musical pieces.
One thing that I'd like to add, to the prior questions is, the paradox of all this is that, and that's what makes Tusk such a great album. It's a complete roller coaster, ensemble. And is that Lindsey, although he had in mind, this old way of putting one mic in the room and recording real back to basics, he retired to his house and did it all himself. So all the basses on his songs was him. It wasn't John. It was him. And at the beginning, I would guess the first month and a half, and that's where that photo that Ken narrated happened. John tried. He really tried, but Lindsey made it impossible for him because he weren't, eighth notes, just straight eighth note, very punkish, no walking bass, none of that beautiful bass lines, very melodic that John is known for. He's one of the amazing British bass players that has gone down in history like that.
Lindsey did it to to Mick also.
Yeah.
With drumming.
Yeah.
With drumming, yeah.
He wanted tom fills that really right on the beat. They weren't laid back at all. They had no finesse. They were very aggressive. And I remember he did that the first time in Rumours, and Mick said, "I can't play like that." And he handed the drumsticks to Lindsey, and Lindsey just went out there and just beat the crap out of the toms, very accented, and it worked. So both guys are right.
Yeah, amazing. All that going on, but that combustion leads to, there was a chemistry there with that band. So amidst all of that, out comes this amazing product,
one of the things, Eric, that happened, and that I haven't read any historian or music critics talk about it, is that Lindsey, in a way, was developing some of the codes that happened much later, in alternative rock, bands like all the bands that started, like, Sonic Youth, the Pixies, REM, not REM really, because they had more shiny guitars, but all these bands that played with noise, with more of a straightforward kind of rock, where Ken was saying, on the beat, real, like, and what he was doing on the drums when he was playing him, he was doubling the bass drum, doubling the snare. Sometimes we had like 4 snares. That's why you hear songs where it sounds like a marching band. But he was trying to get it right, and like Ken says, it's not right or wrong. But what I rescue from all that happened there is that, and this is something that I talked to, what's the name of the leader of Wilco, the band Wilco, Jeff Tweedy.
Yes.
Jeff Tweedy. Jeff Tweedy was telling me once I interviewed him here in Chile a long time ago that for these younger kids, this was like an example. It was like, hey guys, go forward. That's the way to go. You don't need huge studios, big record labels, stuff. Just do it on your own, and also somehow, with a lo-fi quality. And that's why, lo-fi came up as a style, in rock and roll.
Yeah.
And I think Lindsey was quite a pioneer in that, and psychobilly, this other style that was happening just around those days in LA. The Germs were doing it. And then this other style that came out much later called cow punk. The guys from Nashville doing punk. So, that's what I really rescued from Lindsey. Although, like Ken says, it was tough. It was so tense. There was no oxygen in that room.
Sounds like it.
There were other reasons too, but
yeah, Ken, he says to you, turn the knobs to 180 degrees in the opposite direction. And then you question that, and he got agitated by that.
Oh, yeah, well, I did. And basically I was adding a lot of high frequencies. And so I ended up taking out a lot of high frequencies. But that was in the first few days, then it just got to be weird when it just seemed like it was fairly simple. Lindsey could just say, I'm going to do my stuff. Great. We're going to go on vacation, and you go on vacation, and we'll meet back. And it could have been so nice. But I mean, I just remember as every day for 12 months showing up at work and like, oh God, what's going to happen now? And I guess mainly because I feel like I was combating him, and I didn't think I needed to be. And maybe he was combating me, and we could have worked together. I don't know.
Yeah, and all this is
I have
happening.
a lot of doubts on this.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, he was Lindsey, the musical genius, in songs like Sarah, in songs like Beautiful Child, like Ken mentioned, other songs that the layering of acoustic guitars, electric guitars, clean, distorted, echoes, background vocals, harmonies. It was so much beauty there put on that process that, it's a paradox, that was happening, and that was why it was so hard.
Well, that's what I want to get to a little later, as some of the songs that the non-singles, particularly one of his songs that I love, and I want to ask you about, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But this was the most expensive rock album recorded up until that point. At least that's what I've read. Is that true? Over $1 million, which is equivalent to about $4 million today.
That's what I've read too.
Yeah, a lot of pressure. And you worked in a new custom-built studio on the edge of Santa Monica, a new addition to the renowned Village Recorder Studios. The owner was Jordy Hormel.
Hormel.
Yeah,
right.
Jordy Hormel. So he's an eccentric guy, only half block from the local precinct. So knowing his clients like to party and partake in some illegal drugs from time to time, he took extra precautions to prevent any problems with the law. Can you talk about what he did with the entrance, the mirrors, and the fake wall inside?
The building was an old four-story brick building that was from the masonry days, and it had these huge rooms that were used, I guess, for gatherings, big gatherings. And the one that was left over was the one used to build Studio D, where we recorded. But at the entrance was this little green door in the middle of nowhere, and there was no way you could tell that inside, all this madness was going on, and that people like the Rolling Stones, Santana, Kiss, etc., Van Halen had recorded there. So once you were in there were all these mirrors, like in Alice in Wonderland, and you didn't know really who was where, if the receptionist was really in front of you or if it was a reflection, So you really had to sort of close your eyes, open your eyes a few times before you really knew where you were. Then, it was walls and walls of gold records and platinum records of all the big bands that you could dream of, and all these false doors and walls that you could push, and there were doors, entryways into studios, for example. Studio A, where Steely Dan was recording, was one of those rooms. It had a huge mirror, and if you push that mirror, it was a recording room. Wow. So and there was all these stories about this ghost bass player that had been killed or something, and that he would come in at night, and you could hear his voice and his bass through the echo chambers. It was quite a place, So nobody really wanted to be the last person to close the studio at night. It was usually my job to do that.
Wow. Haunted studio. And then the idea for the mirrors, that whole thing was just to throw the cops off, to give you guys some extra time if somebody needed to split.
Exactly.
Wow, that is wild. Of course,
it made the place feel bigger.
Sure.
These little hallways.
There were times, before we did Tusk, when Bob Dylan, who was a very good friend of Jordy Hormel, and also, it was sort of the house of the band. They had Shangri-La in Malibu, but Shangri-La was maintained and kept by the village engineers. So there was sort of this brotherhood thing. So when Bob Dylan would come into the studio to record something or to hang out on the fourth floor with the managers, there were all these secret ways where he could sneak out and nobody could see him. Nobody could go, hey, Dylan, hey, you're so big, so wonderful. The Rolling Stones, too, they did Goat Head Soup there. They finished it.
And this is, of course, we should just to mention, it's the most commercially successful lineup of Fleetwood Mac: Lindsey Buckingham, Stevie Nicks, Christine McVie, John McVie, and Mick Fleetwood. At this time, Stevie and Mick were at the tail end of their affair. Was this something neither of you were aware of at the time you began recording, that they were together?
So I think I was. I think there was a Halloween party at nearly the beginning of the record, and Mick was dating, seeing Stevie. He kept going into rooms at Lindsey Buckingham's mansion, and so we knew something was going on. But I didn't really know. I think Hernan had more knowledge than I did.
Yeah, in those days, she told me about what was going on. She was probably in one of the most beaten, worst states physically and emotionally. At the beginning of Tusk, she refused to go into the studio. She refused to bring her songs, and she also felt very left out, of the main group, because she was also, getting all the attention from the press. I guess she was like the darling, of Fleetwood Mac. And eventually she told me that she had just finished with Mick. And then, her best friend was the one that was replacing her, Sarah. And in that party that Ken mentions, it was an amazing Halloween party that we have pretty good description there in the book. Mick leaves with Sarah. It was one of the times that it was open, to everyone. I think Ken talks about that. Yeah.
Sarah looked spectacular. Yeah. Probably was one of her best days. And she had this beautiful gown on, and she took a limo home, and Mick chased the limo down the street until he got it to stop and jumped in the car with her, and that's when that started. Mick just couldn't keep in his pants.
Oh man! And Hernan, you wrote that Stevie really poured her heart out to you.
Yeah, I felt sorry for this, this girl that, to me, she wasn't this huge star, everyone was like, oh, Miss Stevie, so I was just treating her like a girl that was going through hard times. And so I tried to push her into being a little bit more, harder, with the band and fight for her rights, fight for the right to her songs to be in the album, which finally happened. But at the beginning, Lindsey really was very distant from her. He was not putting the attention that he had put before on her songs for obvious reasons. They had split during Rumours, and there were all these stories, in between that I didn't know. Plus, we found out later that also Don Henley had been part of that triangle, or I don't know what it was then. So she started little by little, getting up, and showing up more in the studio, less stoned and more willing to record. And that's how, we got songs, amazing songs like Beautiful Child, like Sarah, that's to me is one of the masterpieces of Fleetwood Mac. The layering of that song, the work done there to me is superb. It's an example of how to produce, I would say.
Yeah, one of the best Stevie Nicks songs, period, solo or with Fleetwood Mac, absolutely. And I was going to say the song Storms.
Storms too.
Yeah, that's about Mick, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes and no.
Okay.
I know the story behind that, but yes and no. Yes, but a lot of the songs from Stevie are not about just one person, like Sarah. Sarah has many layers, and one of the layers obviously is Sarah, the girl that we know. But also it's a metaphor for this, and she spoke about this, so I can say it here, of this relationship she had with Don Henley, where she was gonna have a baby. She was pregnant. That baby never happened.
Well, yeah, and I was going to ask you about that, and yes, you're right. She did go on record as saying that was the case, because I think for a while there, nobody knew. I think
nobody knew.
Don talked about it first, and then she said, "Yep, that's partially what the song is about."
Yeah. Is that what Beautiful Child is about her affair with an older man. Is Don Henley the older man? I never knew.
No, that song is about somebody that I am obliged not to say the name.
Okay.
But it is an older man, and I can give a couple of hints. It's somebody who had worked with some of the British, in British invasion bands.
Interesting. I wanted to ask you guys about that. What is your approach to the artist when they come to you with a song? Is it one of those things you don't ask what it's about? It's not something for you to really talk about or approach. It's their song. Your job is there just to record it, or do you kind of try to get in their head and say, what's this about, so we can get the right feeling into the...
Yeah, we want to know what it's about. I mean, if it's about your grandmother dying, we probably don't make laughing going on. So we want to, if they tell us, they say we don't, it's private. Okay, fine. But it's happy? Yeah, it's happy. Or it's not always happy. It's bittersweet. Okay. We'll do some bittersweet sounds.
Right.
But as a producer, you want to get as close to getting it right as you can, because if you can get the rest of the track right, the artist will perform vocally the song much better than if they're not happy.
Yeah, because like on a song like Sarah, I'm assuming at that time then Stevie's not talking about the portion of the song about Don Henley. That's something she's keeping to herself, and you just say, okay, I respect that.
I would say, that one of the amazing things about Fleetwood Mac and why they had been so successful in doing all these wonderful albums, and in Ken's role, as a producer, is the fact that, because Ken has lived the other side too, and me too, is that they're so honest, that they're so connected when they go to the studio to do their vocals. And the songs are so personal. Most of the songs are very personal. I would say there's a few songs that you could think, they're more generic, but most of the songs are very personal. Lindsey's songs on the album are like, or they're like this, or they are probably your favorite song, very, very blue, very melancholic, very sad. So he has those two sides. But I would say that we never had to fight, and especially Ken, doing vocals, to try to get a performance that was connected. Versus, other artists that we worked together with Ken. I assisted him on some other albums, including Bob Welsh and other artists, where we really had to do some tricks to get that connection, that emotional connection with the sound, the vocal, the delivery, and the words.
Cognac sometimes.
Right, that's the name of the big guy. Cigars. Remember Bob Welsh with cigars? Yeah.
Right.
Ken, how far do you push somebody with vocals? Like, there's the stories of Mutt Lange who will make somebody do about 50 takes, and they'll take a little bit of take 3 and a little bit of take 27. And how far do you want to push them?
I mean, I don't want to do that to me. I don't want to do that to the crew in the room. I'd like to get a big chunk of the lead vocal in on one take, if possible. I mean, especially if you get them where they're really feeling great. A lot of times, every take is like, this is a master take, and then you say, well, let's just do one and see if we can beat it. And then you go, oh my God, we beat it. And now the dilemma is that I've got 3 or 4 great takes, and do we try to spice it together and make some sort of a hybrid, or do we just take a big chunk? I prefer to take a big chunk, but I don't always get that thing. Yeah, I don't get that choice.
Yeah,
like my daughter, like Colby, she said she learned about it, and I would try to get a big chunk, and then she started learning that we could cut and paste, and then the cat was out of the
bag. Right. I was going to say that in Sarah, for example, you should try to see if you can guess where. Some of the vocal is the original demo.
Really?
With her playing piano at the same time, right? On a Sennheiser 441, and then the rest of the vocals, I would guess 40% of the vocals were done later by Ken, and Ken had to do magic to get them to sound, similar because a completely different. I mean, I think we used a U47 on the later vocals, and so you can tell, that it's a completely different atmosphere, sound, quality, etc. But we privilege the feeling more than the sound in that case.
So you're going to challenge us to figure out where the difference is now?
That's a good one,
yeah.
Sarah.
So I bet you Stevie probably listens to that and says, yeah, that's where I did the other take, and that's where I did the take at a different time. And
I bet she doesn't.
No?
And she's in love with herself. She just says, listen, I sound so good there.
Right.
Well, I tell you.
We could tell her we used 5 different microphones. She said she wouldn't question it.
From reading her interviews and watching her in interviews, she has come a long way, it seems, since then. She can stand up for herself pretty well nowadays. I think that's
she always could.
Yeah.
I mean, she was a rock star. She loved how Rhiannon felt when she sang it live, and she loved Sarah when Sarah was at the end. She loved Silver Spring. She loved it was the one with the broken glass. Which one was that? On Rumours.
Gold Dust Woman.
Yeah, very witchy. The witchy song. Yeah. That reminds me of in the case of Tusk, of Sisters of the Moon. That's one of the songs that, in my opinion, Lindsey didn't give it the fair trial. So the song, it happened. We cut it, and it's there. It's kind of raw, basic. It was mixed beautifully anyway, but it's a kind of song that you could tell the difference between a Lindsey that's completely on it or a song that he doesn't really care, or moments in his life, maybe his mood, he was just saying, hey,
Yeah, Sisters of the Moon was the first song they played live before Tusk came out, I think.
Yeah, and you could hear the difference when they play it live. It really lights up. The song becomes a centerpiece.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's another song on Tusk that never made it. She had a version on, I think it was the American horror show, The Dealer.
That was recorded during Tusk?
That was recorded during Tusk, right. And that's another one of those songs that also Lindsey didn't push his buttons. He didn't apply his magic. He just say, okay, let's cut it. He just did a straightforward guitar. Mick was playing his straightforward drums. It's another one of those songs that someday
could have been so much more.
Yeah, layering and working on the structure, because if not, these songs could go on forever. For example, Sarah, originally was 22 minutes of tape, of 2-inch tape.
So would you guys would like to go back and do some remixing, maybe remastering, if they ever came to?
Well, maybe. If we're getting paid to do it.
The Booked on Rock podcast will return after this. We're back with more of the Booked on Rock podcast. I want to ask you guys about Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys, who was dating Christine at the time. From reading the book, it seemed like he was a really cool guy. Not a rock star ego. Everyone seemed to get along with him, and he did have some input in some of the songs.
He was very fun. The only thing I could say about him, he always had his companion, a big orange juice plastic jug, maybe a gallon orange juice jug, filled halfway with vodka and halfway with orange juice. So, and he was always just drinking that. He was just most of the time shit-faced.
Really?
But he was a very happy drunk. He was unlike John McVie, but Dennis always had good things to say, and he would sit in there in the control room with us and be a part of make comments on the songs. And Christine was deeply in love with him.
You could tell by reading the book. She sure was.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember his input when we were about to record Honey High. It was because it was so much on that Beach Boy vibe and his own vibe. But he received a lot of bullying from John and Mick. Like, hey, go back and go work with your brothers. But don't come in here and give us your input. But he was so light in a way, and so joyful that he never cared about how he was treated. He just went ahead and gave his opinions.
Yeah, it's too bad to see what would have become with him, his solo career. He was coming into his own, I think, around that time, right? He was recording his own stuff.
Yeah, that album that finally came out. You remember that amazing album? Double album.
Yes, very good. Yeah, he wasn't he was writing and recording his own stuff. Yeah,
and also, he was also very important. I would say the day that Lindsey brought this idea of cutting this Beach Boys song that wasn't on the album, Farmer's Daughter. It had that spirit of those vocals that were amazing. That was done in the control room, by the way. It was Ken's idea, and it was amazing.
3 or 4 in the morning, everybody was just at their wits' end, and they were singing it a cappella in the control room, working out the parts. And I said, geez, the vocal sounds so good. I wish we could just capture those vocals like that. So they went, well, why don't you? And so we got a couple of microphones that were very directional and put them on there, and everybody sang in the parts, and we layered it up. And I remember Richard Dashett was fed up, and we were all partying, and he went home early, and I was so excited at the end of the night. I zoomed over to his house and played the cassette, and of course it didn't sound anything like what it sounded like in the control room. He said, "Get out of here, Caillat."
Well, but there is, and you talked about 3, 4 in the morning. There was a thing that you would do just to get everybody through a take, maybe, that late into the night. So you would, it would start with a Robert Frost poem, "Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening." You talk about that?
The woods are lonely, dark, and deep. And I have miles to go, promises to keep.
Sisters of the Moon, an example. The band did 36 takes and got a little help from Mick. He reached into his watch pocket.
The chant for the Robert Frost poem was really for the minions to get some nose candy. In other words, Stevie got it all anytime she wanted to. She had her own. What it would be with Hernan or me and Richard Dashett. Richard would go up and do the chant, and the woods are lonely, dark, and deep. And Mick would go into a trance and reach his hand into his watch pocket and pull out a little vial. So that was so that the road crew or the producers. Later on, we all had our own stuff, but eventually we finally said, "I'm tired of this. Tired of begging." Anyway,
that was that time though. That was the norm. Cocaine was just something that you didn't take it not just to have a good time, but like you say, sometimes you had to get through a certain take or on the road, exhausted, going from show to show, doing interviews. You need a little something to get through the show.
And coffee just doesn't work the same. You just can't keep drinking coffee all night. For me, it was simply a matter of what the clock said. I mean, I early on developed this knowledge that if you stay up, doesn't matter what time we leave, you're not going to come back until 12 hours later. So if we leave at 1 o'clock in the morning, you're not coming back till 1 in the afternoon. We can leave at 4 in the morning, you're not coming back till 4 in the afternoon. And that's just, and what would happen is, as producer, if I let that happen, we did let that happen a few times, we would end up starting at midnight, and then we'd waste a whole day. So I tried to use my logic and to say, listen, guys, it's midnight now. Let's get in here at an early start at 11. John McVie usually wanted to get in. He burned out fairly early. He always wanted to come in at 11 or so and work on his bass parts. So we would have that as an argument to tell the band, it's a good time where we don't have anything to do right now. Let's just everybody go home, enjoy a little bit of Saturday Night Live or whatever it is, and let's get started earlier tomorrow. That would go, 4 out of 8 times, but there was always a component of the group that was ready to party. It'd be Christine or Stevie. No, I want to transcend, or Mick would want to just get fucked up and just do something. Anybody play something, we're all going to play. But we learned very quickly that almost nothing that we ever did in the transcension mode was worthy of anything.
Yeah, and also the other thing that happened, Eric, is that a Studio D was one of the best parties in town. So it was not only the band, the roadies and us, it was their friends, people that, friends of friends that would come, and hang out. And, like, I think Ken talks about this in the book, we're working on a certain sound, maybe, finding any cue or mixing or whatever. And we would have somebody behind us, with a beer mug, or a joint, like, hey, Ken, hey, how about you, man? What are you doing? And so it was that sort of thing, happening a lot of days.
I want to go back to Ken Dashut too, because he had some interesting things that he would do. One thing you talked about was the drum kit with Mick's drum kit every day before recording. He would make adjustments and things like that would make a big difference with the sound.
Made a huge difference. I mean, during Rumours, some days the drums were magnificent, and other days they weren't so much. And eventually we kind of said, hey, hang on a second. I said, Mick, do you tune your drums every day? I don't remember you doing it. Well, the road crew sometimes does it, sometimes they don't. And so we finally said, well, and Richard went out there and started taking it personally most of the time to tune the drums, and he would go put his fingers on each of the screw points and tap and try to get the true tone of each point, and then he had to decide whether he wanted them all to be that tone, and then on the bottom whether they're going to be higher or lower in pitch. And so I think Richard did most of that. I don't think Hernan, you didn't do much of that, right?
No.
Yeah, he just did it, and it had just really made the drums consecutively sound good. They sounded the same. So
what about harmonies? Is there an approach you have to the harmonies with Fleetwood Mac? Because their harmonies are iconic. And was there a preferred approach to it? Did you prefer they all be in the same room together? Did it matter if they did it on separate vocals and you fix it in the mix afterwards? Or?
We did it all kinds of ways. We did it on one mic. We did it with three people each having a separate mic. We did it one person recording and then doubling themselves, and then we would build it up. But I'll tell you what made the biggest difference was Lindsey's contribution. So let's say that the three of them would start to do harmonies, and then we'd like Lindsey would say, wait a minute, and so we'd go through a little section, and Lindsey would say, what are you singing there, Chris? And she would sing her notes of her harmony, and we'd realize it, and then he'd do the same thing with Stevie, and sometimes Stevie and Christine were singing the same notes in a harmony, so they weren't making the most out of their harmonies. So Lindsey started saying, like Brian Wilson, they'd sit around the piano and he'd just, so you da 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 da. There's a great video of a Tom Spain video of making the Tusk album where they show Lindsey and Stevie and Chris sitting around the piano doing exactly what Brian Wilson did in the Beach Boys and just working out all the parts. And like Hernan said earlier about their harmonies were spectacular. Ooh, ah, ooh, ah, ooh. I mean, little stupid parts, but just back in the back. And it was something going on. It was a color, and it worked against. He might be doing a high piano part or a high sustained guitar part or something, but he just interwove all these tones. And I mean, I whatever I say bad about him, I say equally as much good stuff. He's a brilliant producer, brilliant musician. And like, I thought after I finished Rumours album, or Tusk album, I would work with another band, and I thought, I'll just do the same thing. I'll make it sound just like that. But I realized that it's being a good producer is knowing who to produce. And if I didn't have Lindsey Buckingham in the band that I was recording, I didn't have anything. I would ask for a guitar solo, and the guitar solo was a joke. And I'd ask for guitar parts or vocal parts, and you needed a top band.
What do you think of Lindsey's solo work?
I think it's underrated.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's underrated, but I think he's I was really disappointed this last album that he did with Christine, that he went back to his old producer and they did all the same things that they do. And I felt it was, what was it, 10 years ago, 8 years ago, maybe not even that long. In that musical market, he needed to challenge himself. He needed to get some young producer to be in there. And I think, well, I just don't think it's very modern anymore. I mean, he's still brilliant, but it's same old, same old.
Yeah.
Right.
What a guitarist.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Underrated.
one of the things about, you know, that I think he's totally underrated. And, you know, one of the things that totally impressed me when I first met Ken and Richard and the band Fleetwood Mac is when they were remixing Rumours. They were doing, I believe, You Make Loving Fun and a couple of the songs. And in between, we started working on Bob Welch's
Sentimental Lady?
Yeah, Sentimental Lady. And when I hear first, you know, that call and response thing that Lindsey does, you know, with the high guitars, high strung, and then high speed guitars with the toy piano. And he does the same thing with the vocals with Christine. I was just completely blown away. And the way you guys were making it sound, you know, I thought, wow, this is genius. And that's, you know, some of the songs in Tusk have those layers. I mean, have you heard the album, Eric, on headphones?
Yes, I have. I was recently listened to it both just driving around listening to it, but also in my headphones. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many parts there, so many layers that are subtle, very subtle, but you know, they're part of the secret, you know, the secret formula.
Well, I think of Brian Wilson.
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
it. You know, or the wall of sound type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
For those who haven't listened to this album in a while, go back and listen to it now, because at that time everybody had their expectations of it. Rumours, you just can't follow that. It's like Michael Jackson putting the pressure on himself to follow Thriller, or
right.
I don't know if Springsteen ever even bothered to put that pressure on himself after Born in the USA, because Ton of Love was just very different. You just can't make the same album again. You can't have the same results. So I guess you have to go into it. Maybe Lindsey did go into it with the right frame of mind and say, look, I'm not even going to try to sound anything like the last one because we're just going to get criticized for doing the same thing. So let's try it different. Yeah. But as you say, all the Stevie songs and the Christine songs, they have that magical Rumours sound. And I think those are the ones that help on the radio, that help to save it and keep it in the public's eyes and ears. They had, 2-3 top 10 singles, I think, right?
Yeah, I'm amazed that we did as good of a job of making the songs sound similar, like all in the same family, because, I mean, we could have mixed them when they were fully distorted. I mean, it hurt your ears. It just, we were able to sequence the record where it all fits in, and there's a couple of beautiful songs of Lindsey's that at the time I didn't think much about. Oh Diane, what's the other one?
We talking on Tusk?
Book of Love. Book of Love is Mirage, right?
Yeah, like Oh Diane too. Yeah.
His on Tusk would be The Ledge is track 2. So right there, that sends the message. That's track 2. Over and Over is this nice, beautiful melodic song from Christine. Lindsey, by the way, the slide guitar, man. Oof, that's beautiful.
I was gonna guess what's your favorite song from Lindsey and the album, and I'm gonna take a shot.
Okay, go ahead, because I haven't said it yet. I'm gonna.
Okay, but let me see if I'm connected with your you know, insight on the album. I think it would be it would be.
Let me give you a clue.
That's All for Everyone.
Oh my God, you got it! How the hell did you know? Damn, that's good.
I got into your mind. Yes.
Damn, that is impressive.
That's what I was going to suggest is the other song. It's really melodic.
I love that song. Love that song.
Volume pedal guitars, round.
Little dark tone to it. Beautiful harmonies.
High speed guitar. Blink, 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 blink,
yes. Blink. What do you remember about recording that song? What stories did come to mind when you think about that?
the one thing that we tracked it, we got all the master tapes. Ken got all the master tapes from Warner's, so we had a chance to listen to all the tracks, one by one, etc. And he had worked also on the quad box that he had mixed, so he knew the tracks pretty well. And I recall that I had given Lindsey this instrument from the Andes called charango. It's a metal string. It's like a mandolin, but it has like triple strings or double strings in some cases, and the tuning is very weird. And the back of the instrument is an armadillo. So I had brought one of those instruments for Lindsey for Christmas, I believe, from Chile, and I gave it to him, and he retuned it on his own, way. So that high string that you hear is a combination of high string guitars, recorded at low speed, and the charangos. So you hear this real high. Sounds maybe like a 12-string guitar with a capo, but it's a charango.
And we probably doubled or tripled a lot of those things.
Exactly.
Just walls of guitars.
And then the line that Ken was doing, the that descending line, was also doubled between a guitar and a kalimba that he had tuned himself. Right. He had put the right notes. So that's why there's so much stuff there that's interesting, and it captures your imagination. It captures your heart too, I believe.
Absolutely. That's one for the headphones.
I used to love that, I had the volume control for the speakers right there, and we had these gigantic speakers. And it was like when you hit play and you played the music that you made, it just was such pride of ownership. It was a symphony coming out of these speakers that and I really think people are missing a lot by not listening on speakers as much as they used to. I mean, the speakers bring people together, and a lot of this music is meant to be out in the air for people to hear it, not with headphones on.
I hear you. I'm thinking of the Simon and Garfunkel song El Condor Pasa. Is that the same instrument?
Exactly. I mean, if you have to think of any major bands recording with a charango, I would say only Simon and Garfunkel and Fleetwood Mac on Walk a Thin Line, and That's All for Everyone.
I want to talk about some Easter eggs in this album, some interesting things that are hidden. Isn't there something on Over and Over from Lindsey?
He did do on Over and Over the background vocals in the end. He, at the very end vamp, where they're like over and over, bend over. We slid in one and bend over.
Well, Hernan, that gets me to your part. You're in there. You've got something that you say, something Chilean profanity. Is that on the song Tusk?
On Tusk, right.
Where is that? I want to hear it.
It's it's in a few parts, but there's one place that you can hear it. I have it on my cell phone, as a matter of fact. It's one of my ringtones. It's like in Spanish, it's Concha de tu madre huevón. It's like all a combination of swear words in English. You say, can I say it or no? Or not?
Oh yeah, hey, podcasting, hey man, you could say whatever you want.
Be like, motherfucker, son of a bitch, gonna fuck you.
And that's on the song Tusk?
Yes, it is.
The Booked on Rock podcast will return after this.
This is Greg Prado, and you're listening to the Booked on Rock podcast with one of my favorite people in the whole wide world, Eric Senich.
We're back with more of the Booked on Rock podcast. I want to talk about some other songs. Let's get into, we talked a little bit about The Ledge. That's the first of Lindsey's tracks on the album. This is a clear indication to the listener he's making some changes. So for the two of you and the other band members, what were you thinking when he came to you with that song? Because, Hernan, you write that the insistent 2 and 4 beat proto-rock of Eddie Cochran and Gene Vincent was the order of the day. The fact that Lindsey wanted no cymbals, hi-hat, or toms from Mick and no walking bass notes beyond the basic quarter notes from John was a clear signal of his new music beliefs. Talk about that song a little bit.
Well, I think he just wanted it stripped down, so he had freedom to go any direction. I mean, a lot of times he brought things in and he tested them out on us. And I remember there's one song we did like 20 guitars or 20 snares, and he wanted to see what they all sounded like. But I don't know, all I remember is that he wanted it cleaned up, and it seemed like it was one of his ways to control and to hear avenues of him being able to play. But I think Hernan has probably a better take on that.
Yeah, I mean, he was obsessed, with that that style, that later on got labeled as psychobilly, right? And I'm not sure if he ever went to the Palomino. Palomino was a club maybe it still exists in Northridge, the north part of the San Fernando Valley in Los Angeles, where all these bands played, and it was a place where country met punk, and the Germs were doing it. So he loved that huge, neck-wrecking speed of songs like that, where the guitar, plus, the whole whammy thing on the guitar, with full bending, but he was doing it with his fingers. He was not doing it with a whammy bar. So that's an amazing thing. And in those days, I was just discovering that sound. I wasn't into punk at all. So through Lindsey, I started discovering, all what was going on, and it was quite interesting. For example, I became really a fan of the Jam and the Stranglers. The Stranglers was another band that Lindsey liked because they were more melodic. They had more of a structure. And eventually, if you hear some of the singles from the Stranglers, you could think that they had the Fleetwood Mac formula. The drum and bass thing, that. So, but those kind of songs like The Ledge or What Makes You Think, you're so funny.
Not that funny.
Not that funny. I mean, they were so personal, and they were all directed at Stevie. So he was living those songs. He was not only bringing new songs. He was it was actually his life. It was like that was the soundtrack of his life, was those songs.
What was their songwriting partnership like at that point?
I saw no partnership at all between them in those days. I'm not sure.
Right. Me neither. No. There was just hate between Stevie and Lindsey. I think. I couldn't tell who hated who was to blame. It seemed like both of them thought the other person was to blame, and I gave more weight to Stevie's opinion than Lindsey's, because Lindsey would kick her and things, and while they were playing, So
was that the same on Rumours, or had things changed?
Things had changed. On Rumours, they were still in love, and when they started out, they were still in love, and then Stevie even about a third of the way through said, we need to make this record no matter what, because I don't want to be poor anymore. I don't want to be a cleaning lady. And if we can make this record, her attorney had told her, and we can make this record as good as the White Album, we will be superstars. We'll never have to work again. So she said, I'm begging you guys, we all know we're breaking up. Let's just put all that behind us and let's make the record. And I thought that was the reason I wrote the book. I thought that was pretty much of a superhuman thing to do. But that was just really amazing that they did that. Was
Lindsey putting down all his parts separately when she wasn't in the room?
I mean, there were no group harmonies on his songs. He did most of the harmonies himself, sung falsetto and other parts and on his songs. But on the group songs, they're all singing together.
He plays guitar on some of Stevie's stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when he had to do his guitar parts, he did those separately, right? He wasn't doing those with Stevie. They weren't bouncing ideas off of each other saying, what do you think of this? It was just.
They never bounced ideas. He was the guy that did the ideas. She looked to him for the ideas.
Yeah.
But I remember there was a in that Tom Spain video, what was it called? They're not Making Tusk or something documentary.
Yeah.
But I remember Stevie was singing her lead vocal, and Lindsey was right next to her doing a harmony, and she kind of laughed at him like she forgot that they were at war. There was kind of a moment where they seemed like they were enjoying each other.
What about Think About Me, number 20 single? This can you write a refreshing throwback to the old school of Fleetwood Mac's cutting live in the studio, soup to nuts. Not a surprise it was a hit. That was very reminiscent of the Rumours sound.
I think I said it all.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, that was just started out and kicked ass all the way to the end.
Not surprised it became a hit. Top 20.
Right.
Yep. And Sarah, as you guys said, one of Stevie's best, one of my all-time favorite Fleetwood Mac tracks, top 10 single. Hernan, if you could talk about that song, you pushed hard to get that one on the record. What do you remember about the song, Sarah?
It was happening right in the middle of Stevie trying to get back to the studio, trying to push her songs, trying to be another player, in the band. And she had this feeling that they didn't want any of her songs. And that there was always, sort of giggling or making fun of her when she would bring in her cassettes. Because, on your prior question, you said if Lindsey had played on her songs. Basically, what happened, Eric, was that she would bring her cassettes that were done very raw, on those ghetto blasters. Remember those old cassette players?
Yeah.
But she would have like a rhythm machine, in the back playing. She would strum, a guitar maybe with open tuning or maybe real basic piano chords, and she would sing. And then she would play it on another cassette player and transfer it while she added harmonies. That was the quality of her demos. And Lindsey would pick up that, and he would restructure the song in the studio with the whole band sitting there on their instruments, with their instruments at hand. In the case of Sarah was one of the songs that maybe Stevie didn't believe at all that it was a good song. Maybe she had the idea that one day she would do a solo album. And from what I've known in the last years, she was already being talked on the ear that she should sign a solo deal with Modern Records. But I didn't know that. And so she said, hey, let's do a whole bunch of demos. And maybe they were for that solo album, maybe. But I recognized that there was something on that song that was beyond just, another song. It was something epic. There was something very it would touch your heart, and it was also beautiful. The melody was beautiful. So we brought it into the studio, and I remember the first thing I did, I played it to Ken and Richard. They liked it, and so the first thing we did, we cut this 24-track 2-inch tape into a more, a workable piece of tape. So I believe the first cut was from 22 or 18 minutes to 11 minutes or 12 minutes. And one night we got Mick to play brushes, and he does that beautiful drum track on the song, and he starts liking the song. Then we convinced John to do the same thing. He plays that wonderful walking bass, and that's, the whole show was ready to be presented to Lindsey. And that's what's amazing about Lindsey, that Ken has spoken about it, his shiny side. I guess he fell in love with the song, and he fell in love with his old ways of working music, of how he could embellish a song, how he could add all the parts. Because that song, if I remember, we had like 48 tracks. It was the two masters running at the same time, including the keyboards, including the background vocals, all kinds of guitars, electric guitars through Leslie into an echo chamber, distorted guitars, high-speed guitars. I mean, it was the works. So that's how that song, started real humble, and it became a song that's till today. I guess it's one of the most loved songs by fans.
You mentioned something in the book about how she writes a story with her songs.
Yeah, in this case, the original lyrics went for those 22 minutes.
Wow.
So it was very tough to decide what we would leave out, but we had to leave out sections.
And she usually cries when we're cutting this stuff out.
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, she'd be like, "But that was about my mother and my grandmother." And okay, well, we'll leave those in and we'll take something else out. And pretty soon she realized that something had to go. But anyway, she wrote such great stuff the whole time.
The song Tusk started out as a warm-up that the band did. This was originally titled Stage Riff. Interesting that it wasn't as melodic as the standard hit single, but there's something about that just pulls you in, starting with mixed drumming, and you're just pulled in the whole way through. A lot of cool production work on this. The University of Southern California's Trojan Marching Band on the single, recorded at Dodger Stadium. Chapter all about that experience, a bunch of wild sounds and instruments, and this was pre-Pro Tools era. And there was some careful splicing of tape on this one, too. I was wondering if you could talk about that.
Yeah, and not so careful too.
Yeah.
I mean, we had to do stuff that wasn't really possible. We were syncing two machines together. When we got to Dodger Stadium, we knew what the band's parts were going to be, but we didn't really realize that how we were going to record them. I said we set up some microphones out at Dodger Stadium, and I said, okay, well, where's everybody standing? So I can mic the trombones, all the whole sections. And the band leader goes, we're a marching band. Nobody stands, we're marching. I said, what? Well, how am I going to record that? I said, they can't just march in place? And no, they're going to be marching. So we had, right off the bat, and we realized we didn't have enough headphones for 100 and some musicians or whatever they were. And you would have thought we would have thought the whole thing out better anyway. So we put things down on a second tape machine. We had built the basic track on a 124 track, and then the second 24 was going to be used for all of the marching band. So we finally figured out how to get the marching band recorded, and then we recorded it onto this second tape. And then we didn't have, like I said, we didn't have headphones. So we decided to give the orchestra leader a pair of headphones, and so we played him the stereo mix of the studio version that we had, and with a clicked them loud in his headphones, so he stood there and he could conduct the marching band, and so they had their charts and they would play the marching band, but the time was very loosey-goosey because nobody was playing to a click. Nobody could hear the track at all. So we recorded that down, and then we had to do some clever speed adjusting of the second tape to make all the sections work. So I remember that along with all these sound effects that we had done, the doubling and tripling of Lindsey singing, real savage-like, and percussion tracks and just everything to basically make it sound like it was one idea. And on anything else?
Yeah, it was a challenge. I mean, what Ken was saying, it was all happening with the pressure of all these. I think it was like 150 musicians, right, plus the band, plus all the friends, and a constant party because it was beer, wine, everything. And I remember that finally, one of the ways to solve this was to get shotgun microphones, the ones that you use in cinema, a whole bunch of them, and have them march a little bit, move a little bit so they could get the beat. And so we would have these long cables and follow them, with these microphones to get, an approach to a more direct sound, because we also had, microphones on the bleachers everywhere in the stadium. That's why it sounds so big. If you hear in headphones, you hear this noise, and it's part of the reverb bouncing off the bleachers.
That's in the opening of the track.
Yes.
The lead in.
Well, that's a loop that we created. That it was a backwards loop. Somebody's talking, and it's a loop just to kind of add a dimension. Without that, it's kind of like a magic trick. You could see what we were doing.
And that was Mick's idea to put in the marching band?
Yes.
That was his idea.
Mick came in one day and he said, I have a brilliant idea. He said, well, we'll do a marching band, and then every city we play in has their own marching band, and we'll invite the city's marching band to play at our concerts. So that'd be community service. And so that was Mick's genius out of transition.
Yeah, and he smacked some lamb chops with a spatula on the song.
Yep.
That's another one. You got to put the earbuds in and listen closely for those. The Booked on Rock podcast will return after this. We're back with more of the Booked on Rock podcast. Mick's drumming. Yeah. He's got that unique style, and I remember he recently credited that to his dyslexia. It tempered the way he thought about rhythm and the way he played the instrument. What are your thoughts of Mick Fleetwood as a drummer?
Well, he's a monster. He's a big man, and he's got such finesse. I remember he always had his toms, to me, backwards, because he had the low tom and then the middle low one. But the middle two were kind of like, instead of it higher, a little lower, and then to the low ones over here, he had the lower one first and then the high one. But I could never figure that out, but it made sense to him. So, but I just remember his finesse on everything. He would play, and he plays loud, right? But his kick drum we called him Featherfoot. And when he's playing, he actually kind of sings a nonsensical rhythm while he's playing. So you'll hear, and his kick drum would pick that up, and you would hear him going while he's doing all these amazing fills. I think he's one of the best drummers. I mean, I remember we did a session, and the people sent charts over to him. He says, I can't read, I can't play that. He says, I just have to figure it, I just have to feel it. And so they were kind of upset that he couldn't play the chart, but afterwards they were very happy with what he did.
What an inspiration to anybody somebody who's younger and they find out that they have dyslexia or something like that, and they just want to give up, and it's actually set him apart from the rest.
Yeah, it makes you. I think most musicians should. I always look at Paul McCartney. This guy can play everything,
Yeah, the one thing about Mick that I find very interesting, beyond that he's one of the most amazing drummers, of that whole blues rock era of, Peter Green, John Mayall, etc., is that, the way, and that's why, there's a element of surprise in his playing, because he not always accents the one, he not always, hits the one straight on. Sometimes he turns around the one and the two, right? And he hits it with a snare. So he has two snares there. So he's like, doom ba, ba ba ba, doom ba, ba. So it's syncopated, beat. The way he turns around, it sort of, plays with your mind. And he does the same thing with the toms and everything. So I guess that's part of dyslexia. But, on the other hand, as drummers, the way they function, and they got their two sides of the brain so active, it tells a lot about them, that there's a whole part of the brain that's lit. Some people don't even use, a third of the brain, but drummers do. And they need this complete independence. And I think Mick is one of those.
Yeah, Tusk is just hypnotic. And that was another top 10 single. Was that Lindsey's choice to release that as a single, as the first single from the album?
I think it was the label's call.
Okay.
Did you? Weird one. I was very disappointed with it, particularly because there was a number of circumstances that surrounded the release of that record. Stevie had lost one of her demo tapes that we gave all the band mixes of the record as we were progressing, and she lost it, and RKO Radio, I think, picked it up, and they started playing the record on the day that we were supposed to our record was supposed to be released. And then simultaneously the label decided to, well, I guess it wasn't simultaneous, but I was told the label was going to do record one as the first side of Tusk as a single release. With what I mean by that is they were going to release one of the discs in a custom album cover, and then the second half was going to be released into another custom album cover. That when the two records and sleeves were put together in this master cover, it completed a picture, and that was Mick's idea, and somehow that never got to fruition, and I certainly never knew about it. So when I looked at the RKO came out and released the copies of the music, and then all the other radio stations were pissed off because they thought we gave RKO the scoop. So nobody was playing us except they were playing the single, which was Tusk, and the fact that the Tusk album was a double album and now was full retail of $17.98 or whatever, and people were going, "What the fuck?" I mean, we got this crazy song Tusk with not much melody. The girls aren't in it at all, and the only thing that's available is that, and so nobody wanted to jump in to buy the record. So the sales initially just didn't go anywhere. And everybody's impression of the record was that it was a flop.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Yeah, like Sarah or Think About Me as a lead single might have made more sense. That'd be the more conventional pick, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was remembering too, another element there was the fact that finally the label Warner's pushed for the full price, of the double album, not a discount price. And that same year, The Clash released London Calling, that was also a double album, and it was priced as one album, not as a double album.
Right.
And it was the days, I remember 1980, if I'm correct, there was a little bit of a crisis economically, in the States. So people were not so willing to pay so much money for anything that came up. So all these things, really played against it.
And was there a standoff between Lindsey and the label? Did he push hard to have it a double album?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't remember much conversation about it, but
I think it was Mick.
Well, I think that the record company was really at their height of greediness. They knew that we were coming off of Rumours, which sold, unbelievably well. So they figured whatever we charge, they're going to pay it. There's going to be a bunch of people who pay for that, and we're going to make a killing now. So they wanted to get their money now. But I don't know. I don't understand how we mixed and mastered and everything, and it was a surprise to me when it came out. So I wasn't in the loop, or I just was getting married at the time, which I was, I guess. So I wasn't really paying attention.
The title of the album, Tusk, Stevie wasn't happy about that. Were there other names considered?
No, but she had been promised that album cover.
That's the other thing. Yeah, the picture. I want to get to that.
It was going to be her picture is going to be on it, her and whatever they were going to come up with, and yet Peter Beard took this picture of my dog wrestling with my foot,
Scooter,
and Stevie was just so pissed. She says, I hate you. I hate your dog. I put a spell on your dog. I said, Stevie, my dog had nothing to do with it. I didn't have anything to do with it. But all the other guys, I remember the road crew and the Lindsey and the guys were going, Tusk, get it? Tusk?
Yeah,
Tusk.
yeah.
No, I don't get it. What are you, 6?
Stevie cursed your dog.
Cursed my dog.
Oh, man, Scooter. Scooter was your buddy, huh? That was your guy. He was
my sidekick, my wingman.
He was with you everywhere you went. He's biting your leg on that album cover, by the way. So that's your leg and that's your foot.
Right.
That's so funny. Yeah, the original concept was an image of Stevie dancing and twirling. It would have been like Rumours, right? It would have been similar to that. And did Scooter live a long life, I hope? Long, happy life?
He didn't live a long life. He lived about 3 more years. I never had him neutered, so I figured, and he got out one day and was chasing a dog across Pacific Coast Highway. So.
Oh, you didn't call Stevie and said, I told you not to curse him.
I did see her in the studio in a concert one time after that. And I said, Scooter died. And she says, I'm glad.
Oh
my God.
And I don't really think she meant it,
Oh, Ken.
She was just mean.
Wow.
But.
Oh, man.
She had her own poodle, what was her name? You remember, Ken? That was always in the studio. Yeah. But Scooter wasn't good friends with a poodle, so.
He was just being a guy.
Yeah, absolutely. He was one of us.
Scooter, yeah. Well, this one's for each of you as we're winding down here. Favorite track on the album and why? So we'll start with you, Ken.
Well, I have to say, the one that I really love, for sure, it's Beautiful Child, but I love Over and Over because I love how the bass line turns around and starts pedaling towards the end, and that over and over, and it's just so hypnotic. It reminds me of Blue Jay Way from the Beatles, you know.
Yeah.
It's just very mysterious, and so Over and Over is my second favorite. Beautiful Child is a brilliant production and engineering feat of sonic quality. It's just amazing.
Hernan?
Definitely Sarah, you know, above it, because it's such a beautiful, you know, it's a masterpiece in all ways. But I also like Brown Eyes. It has all that bluesy feeling, and unfortunately, you know, we can only hear Peter Green at the end, but Ken and me have heard the one where Peter Green plays all the way through. You know, it was Lindsey's censorship that he said, no, he cannot be in the album. He cannot be. So Ken sneaked in those few lines at the end, and you can hear his distinct style, you know, that real low tremolo thing. So I love that song, Brown Eyes. The beat, the way Christine is singing, she's so passionate about it. And obviously, Think About Me. Think About Me. I remember a session when we heard like a mix that Ken and Richard had assembled, and we lowered the lights. And I guess it was close to the end of the album, and you just hit, you know, play, and we were all sort of in tears, because it was, we were guessing that it was the end of the album. It was, in a way, Lindsey, you know, after everything that he had done, you know, saying, hey, think about me. You know, I'm not such an asshole, you know, maybe, you know.
Right.
So I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. Those are, I mean, so many great memories of people pulling together throughout that whole record, you know, and I talk about it in the book. It's like, what do you do when you move into a place for a year, and how do you try to make your routine regular? And I would be driving in from Pacific Coast Highway, listening to the radio, whatever is contemporary on the radio. We get to the studio, and I might talk about some Steely Dan song I heard or something, and we all shared things. And then you get into now here he comes. Let's get, you know, or sometimes we just start drinking.
Yeah.
Right. And making videos.
Did you see? If you haven't seen there's a video, a YouTube video of Christine and Stevie singing "Happy Birthday" to Mo Austin, singing "Happy Birthday" to Warner Brothers for 25 years of. I think it was, I don't know if Mo was 25 years or Warner's was 25 years old, but Christine and Stevie are just shit-faced. And we had the Tom Spain film crew there, and so I guess the management called up and I said, Stevie, can you and Chris sing "Happy Birthday" to Mo? And the girls, it goes on, and the girls were just really trying to be serious. "Happy birthday," and then they would crack up and they'd fall over each other. But it's exactly how the girls were pretty much the whole way through on the record. They were lighthearted, and they were, you know, and anyway, that's kind of like our companions that we had making this record.
Yeah. I don't want to leave out Christine McVie's importance on this album. You did talk about Over and Over, but she's got some great tracks on this album, and she's got an amazing voice.
Yeah.
She's wonderful.
Never Make Me Cry. That might be my favorite, you know, from her on this album. But then again, Over and Over, that's great too. So I guess the last question would be, listening back on this double album, Tusk today, we're 41 years later. What do you feel about the album? You happy with the finished product? You proud of what you did?
I have to be proud. I mean, we made it. We made it through. It's a bunch of people, maybe 15 of us, that pour our hearts and our souls into that music, into making a record and making all of everything that it takes to make a record, including the sequencing and the songs and the keys and everything. We made something come to life, and I'm very proud that when you play it, it comes to life still 41 years after we made it, you know. And Hernan and Richard Dashit and the whole control room crew, we had such great support. There was the village maintenance people that supported us and all the crazy stuff we wanted to do, and you know, Christine and Stevie's had their girls with them, and bringing us crazy lobster orders and Cristal champagne and the cognac and cocaine. And I mean, it was just for us to be a part of this. I'm surprised we don't have a 41-year reunion, but now nobody's close to each other anymore. But,
Well,
you know, it was great times.
Hernan?
Yeah, I'm completely proud of it, and for me it was a privilege to work with Ken. Learned so much, with Richard too. We didn't talk much about Richard, but Richard, Ken and Richard had to play this, the bad guy, the good guy, to get things moving, and it was tough. But we were faced with huge challenges in terms of personalities, in terms of where Fleetwood Mac was in those days, how big they were, expectations, frustrations, all these things. But we kept pushing, and many of the things, many of the resources we used, many of the tools, the creative ways out of situations. For me, in my career, Ken already had done a whole bunch of big things before. For me, we're completely, they were masterpiece of resources to apply for other bands, because we had full how would I say, an analog technology, acoustic spaces, and time. So let's try recording inside the toilet. Let's drop a microphone inside the drain. Let's things like that. And that's how recording arts get better. That's how you can also influence other bands. How you can leave your legacy to other people, to young engineers, to young musicians, people that are still trying to do the same thing we did, and I think that's important.
And it's much harder for them now.
Yeah.
With the time constraints. Last time I talked to Stevie, she said, Ken, I'm doing my record, and the label gave me 13 days in the studio.
Oh.
And I said, we had 365 days. We had unlimited time, but we had as much time as we wanted to do. And I keep telling people now that, nobody's that smart to get a record done in 13 days, make a great record, and part of my thing is I think, and if I have another studio, I'm going to offer funding to the artists. So you guys want to spend 13 days in the studio? Why don't you spend a month? We'll pitch in, we'll help you, make it affordable to you, so you can take your time and really try different things, because we'll have a better record come out of our studio. You'll have better sales. Everybody wins.
Get Tusked, the inside story of Fleetwood Mac's most anticipated album. And it's available through Amazon. Any other sites you want to direct people to get a copy, or is Amazon the best way?
I think we have a website called gettusked.com.
Okay.
I have to say, we haven't been tending to it much, but I think it's still there. You can get things like personalized T-shirts, and you can. There's some photos there. So Hernan took a lot of great photos, and if you want them framed and signed, you can get all that stuff.
Okay, I'll make sure I put a link up in the show notes page as well. And I should also mention too, Ken, you co-authored another book on Fleetwood Mac about Rumours, making Rumours.
I did. That was my first book, and this was my second book. And I was going to. They asked me to do the third book on Mirage, but I just don't want to do it.
No.
So I'm not going to do it.
Okay.
But I did just renew my copyright for the term "Get Tusked," and so because there was near the end of the record, one of the girls, Judy Wong, made T-shirts for everybody. They said, "Get Tusked Ken, get Tusked Hernan, get Tusked Stevie," and so there's pictures of all the band members wearing this "Get Tusked." And so I was going to sell it as merch. If you wanted to get Tusked, Eric, you can get it.
I can get it at gettusked.com.
Yes.
Steve Stifel is the co-author. Did I pronounce his name right for the Rumours book?
Yes.
Stifel.
Yeah,
okay.
He was a Rumours.
Okay. And social media pages. Do you guys want to get any social media pages out there? Facebook, where people can reach out to you?
Boy, we should be saying a lot here, but all I have is I think I have a Get Tusked Facebook, and I have a Rumours Facebook page. I have my page, and not too much.
Okay.
The COVID took the fun out of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're telling me, right? Yeah, we're finally getting back into touring, thankfully. Some of these bands are starting to roll out the touring dates again.
Right.
Hernan, any Facebook pages or Twitter or anything that you'd like to get out there?
I have Instagram is pretty much active in my case. I use a lot of Instagram because I do some live things. I analyze songs, albums. I do a lot of like content, rock content through my Instagram page. So it's Hernan Rojas N, HERNAN ROJAS N, and like no. Yeah, that's my Instagram account.
Okay, guys, thanks so much.
Great
All right,
conversation.
and I'm great seeing you, buddy.
Good to see you, buddy.
All right,
See you guys. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Thanks to Ken Caillat and Hernan Rojas for taking us through their book, Get Tusked, the inside story of Fleetwood Mac's most anticipated album. Be sure to subscribe to Booked on Rock at Spreaker or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. You can find us online at bookedonrock.com, on Facebook at facebook.com/bookedonrockpodcast, on Twitter at bookedonrock, the email address, thebookedonrockpodcast@gmail.com. You can also contact us through the website. If you're an author of a book on rock and you want to be on the podcast, just send me an email. I'm Eric Senich. Thanks for joining me. Look forward to having you back again next time for another brand new episode of Booked on Rock.